if you look around London, LGBTQ bars are closing down at an extraordinary rate. And it's because of that. Because the rents are so high, and yet the wages have not kept anywhere close to the rise in the cost of living. So nobody has any disposable income. So where you would, before you would go out and you would spend, £30 on a Friday night, £30 on a Saturday night, you might only now be spending £50 a month, which means that then those bars have lost £100, £200 revenue every single month. And that's because people just can't afford to go out anymore.
You asked the Mayor of London about this, didn't you? About nightlife closing. What was he talking about?
I think one thing that Sadiq Khan is really good at is being in tune with what the LGBTQ plus community in London is feeling. I think he does truly care. That said, unfortunately, we had Amy LeMay as sort of the sole protector of these venues. And so what he kind of said was, we've got Amy LeMay looking after it, and it's something that she's on top of. And I think objectively that is a fair thing to say is not quite true, because as we've said, we've seen these venues. I mean, as someone that goes to them, as someone that works in them and goes to them, I've seen them close time and time again. I mean, it was only like a year ago that we lost GOI late, and he was very across that. But what I never quite understood from my interviews, because I interviewed him about that back then as well, is I've never quite understood what was actually physically being done to say, we can save you from closure. You kind of hear all these figures being thrown around, and you hear that, we've invested this into this and that into that. But none of it quite adds up to what money has been put in the pockets of the people that need it to keep these venues afloat and to make up for what Divina was saying, which is the loss of income from people like me, you, not necessarily being able to go to them because drink prices have gone up. In that, salaries have not. Prices for bars to open have gone up. Again, salaries have not. So it's like everything's going in opposite ends. So Sadiq, in short, I would say gave a bit of a non-answer, dare I say it, to be honest.
But did Amy LeMay specify who she was protecting? Because it's possible that she was protecting the proprietors and the local residents rather than the...
It's very possible. From what I understood, she had worked directly with the venues, to be fair to her, and had spoken with... To close them, yeah. Sorry, Jeremy Joseph, your venues are going.
Very successful at that.
Well, she was very good at that.
We should actually calculate her success rate.
Listen, it is scary how bad... I mean, I can only speak specifically to the LGBTQ plus venues as opposed to the wider scene, but I know that she'd spoken with the venues. What I do not know is, again, how that materialized into this is what we're going to do to make sure you stay open, because this is what I mean. I was doing directly this at one point, and I never quite understood it. And I don't know if you can shed any light on it, Divina, as someone that's in the scene as well, but even when I was working specifically on nightlife, it was never quite understood what exactly was being done, even by the venues. They would say to me, we've had them in today, they did a little photo op and left, and I'm like... Okay, what does that actually add up to? And I don't know if you've heard anything different, but that was what I was hearing directly from the venues, let alone the people we were interviewing.
I think that look, you do need another straight person to speak for you.
There aren't enough.
I do wonder sometimes if LGBTQ is sort of used as a nice photo op. It's seen as quite light and fluffy.
You think?
A lot of the well, look, I told you I was going to speak for you because none of you
here we go.
said it, have you? Like, Jesus Christ, got two of you on.
Davina's not said anything. Yeah, no.
She's kept quiet, mouth shut. But it is seen as a very light and fluffy sort of like, this is a wonderful photo opportunity, but actually getting to the grit of it. Like, I wonder, you look at Soho, which I would say is sort of the home of LGBTQ. That's a space where people can go and they can discover themselves, or they can, it's a home for it, for it. For them. But that's where all the venues are.
Yeah.
And you look at the sort of shops that are now cropping up, or the bars that are cropping up across Soho. You look at what the Mayor of London is introducing about having these sort of quiet neighbourhoods, and you wonder, how much do you really care about this community? Is it a good photo opportunity for you, or is it something that you really truly believe should have this space in London to thrive in?
The thing is, all of that is great, but until you do the nuts and bolts of the stuff that is wrong with the economy, it doesn't matter.
You never get anywhere.
It doesn't matter because nobody's got the money to go out and have a nice time anyway.
Well, I was thinking more like sort of rent controls. If you were really worried about preserving that that neighbourhood
Yeah.
for what it is, then perhaps you should have rent freezes there. Perhaps it should be like, you know, a sort of barrier to entry if you want to open up a new venue there.
Totally.
Do you know what I mean?
Well, one thing that was really interesting is Jeremy Joseph, who owned GOY Lake, which has now shut, owns Heaven, which is probably, I would say, one of the most iconic venues in the world for the community, certainly the country, and also owns GOY Bar here. He's now potentially going to be shutting down GOY Bar. And one of the main reasons...
Really?
Yeah, a couple of months ago it was announced. And that's because the rent is insane. And this is what I mean when I say about the Mayor of London and Amy LeMay at the time, is it's not to say they don't care. I mean, Amy LeMay is part of the community. I don't believe that the issue here is that no one cares. I believe the issue is what Divina said. We've got this overarching problem that means the LGBTQ plus, I can't even say it, the LGBTQ plus community is like this microcosm of what's actually going on. And then it kind of looks like we're all just playing victim, being like, oh, this is happening. But actually, it's almost like an early sign of what's to come elsewhere.
Yeah.
Because LGBT plus people, for the most part, go out a lot because a lot of them, not stereotype, but not necessarily have children, have a little bit more disposable income in that sense. And so you would
lot
think,
are out all the time.
Well,
honestly.
I mean, I know I am. And so you would think it would be right. But if our venues can't survive...
Sometimes I have to shun the community because I'm like, I cannot go out again. I can't
Sometimes.
do it.
Can't take anymore. But I used to live in Stoke-on-Trent, and I think if you want to know how the economy's doing, you go to somewhere that is quite deprived, like Stoke. Stoke used to be, you know, in the early 90s, it was the nightclub mecca for the Midlands. People would bus in from Manchester and Nottingham and Birmingham and, you know, from the north. They would come from all over and bus in to Hanley. And then as times have gone on and the people in Hanley have got poorer and then other scenes have grown up, that has died down. The median income in Stoke is vastly lower than everywhere else. And there is no nightlife scene in Hanley anymore.
And it used to be a thriving...
And it was...
because of the
it had
pottery.
4 3,000 capacity nightclubs.
Wow.
4.
Wow.
In a tiny... That's what I mean. People used to bus in
Yeah.
to Hanley to go and party.
But the area had money. I went up there during the election and it was Jonathan Gullis's constituency I went to. And
It was. Thank God. Bye, John.
I genuinely could not believe, like I was on one of the smaller high streets and we were filming there. And I looked up and I saw a sign for Sure Start, which obviously hasn't been around for quite some time. And I thought, Christ, like fuck me, how long has this high street not been renovated in? If one of the storefronts still says Sure Start,
Yeah.
do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
But it used to have the pottery industry there,
Yeah.
right? And slowly, one by one, they've closed. We're now importing everything from,
Malaysia, which is fine. That's what happens. That's business. But it only works if you then, as a government, have a strategy for then developing business in those areas, which they just don't. There is no business strategy for the country. There's no, okay, all of this happens in London. Great. Now, how do we help develop the rest of the country? You know, and that's one of the problems. So you see that in that microcosm in Stoke, that you start with this amazing, thriving environment that then, because wages haven't kept up, and then slowly things are closing down, which then means there are less people because they don't come into town, you know, and then they did a compulsory purchase of thousands of houses, and then the money dried up because it was 2007, 2008. So none of those houses got built. So you've extricated all of those people from the town centre, you've completely demolished half of the town, and then there's nothing left. So there's nobody coming into town, and then it's just, poor business planning as well.